I just begin. Okay, no problem. I hope it's an eternal joke of mine. I will repeat it also here. You notice that I joined the applause, no? I've chosen sides because compare them. Fascist leaders, they never joined the applause. They just accept it. Stalin and others always stood up and joined the applause, like, I'm just a servant of the people and so on. So, okay, let me go on quickly because it's terrible short time. I cannot, and now, unfortunately, it will be a very brief, more theoretical speech. My starting point is that Trump really changed the basic coordinates of our predicament. While the left babbles about the need to go beyond global neoliberalism, Trump did it. I accept here Yanis Varoufakis, who said, no, what the left was dreaming about, Trump did it. And I can go endlessly on this list. For example, what's the ultimate leftist dream? People gather and occupy the seats of power. Trumpists did it on 6th of January and so on. And I'm ready to go here very quickly to the end. I think the left should not just rethink its presuppositions, blah, blah, blah. It should put in under question the basic model of subversion, provocation is good. You know, the model of 68. Those in power have decency, we can be vulgar, we use the F word, and so on and so on. No, they are today the true, even postmodernists. A very superficial, easy observation. Trump may present himself as an advocate of traditional values, but can you imagine if we accept the usual in right-wing media definition of postmodernism? They don't advocate any eternal values, everything is historical, relativist, self-irony, and so on. Trump is the ultimate postmodernist president. And I think the result to do is, I'm ready to go to the end here, is take two very visible leftist politicians, both pushed to the edge, Jeremy Corbyn here and Bernie Sanders in the United States. Sorry, they are not playing any of these dirty jokes, obscenity games. They are simply, I would almost say, in the most noble sense of the term, decent conservative guys. This is how I once was in immediate contact with Bernie Sanders. This is how he also perceives himself. So what I'm saying is that, I'm provoking you now, that we, the subversive left, should absolutely reject this model, traditional model of subversiveness. We should discover in our political activity values like common decency, even, I think it should be our term now, moral majority, common people, and so on. My thesis is here that look at figure like Elon Musk. He is, for me, the ultimate result of how the legacy of 68 protests was appropriated by the establishment. He is ridiculously self-joking, clown, and so on and so on. No, this is their position now. So even at the level of capitalism, we have many theories. Varoufakis, this techno-feudalism and so on, or Trump as a kind of a fascist. With fascism, I have a problem. I think there is an old intellectual laziness among the left. They see clearly that Trump, there is something bad, and without thinking what is really bad. Fascism. So Trump must be a fascist. Maybe, but in what precise sense? While I am close to all the circulating definitions, I think that my starting point will be here. I will really try to go very quickly. The book by, I think, Jonas Goldberg, who wrote a book, Liberal Fascism, some 10, 15 years ago. And his idea was that the new politically correct left is the real follower of fascism, with all their politically correct regulation and so on and so on. I think that what Trump is doing is rebelling against what he misperceives as politically correct cancel culture, regulation, this type of censorship for pure libertarianism. But he provides a wonderful case of how, in the specific sense, not just liberalism, libertarianism, get rid of the state and so on, but we immediately see the result. There never was so much oppression and censorship as we have it today. Careers are lost for one wrong term, and so on and so on. So how can such a weird economy, in the sense of libidinal economy, situation work, where, on the one hand, racism, making dirty jokes about women and so on, it's all tolerated, but at the same time, censorship is here. I want to do something terribly old-fashioned here to shock you. I will follow Lacan here, who, it was really how incredibly he was looking ahead. Lacan's reaction to the 68 rebellion was that they are too shameless. They know no shame. In this, let's use dirty word and so on. And Lacan predicted that the price they will pay is that they will get a new master, which will be even more shameless than they are. And I think today we are at this point. Not just with Trump. Let me now focus nonetheless on the example that is always in our minds, at least in the background, what happens in Gaza. I'm here, I try to be as honest as possible. I am aware of also all the limitations, problematic anti-Semitic statements by many Palestinians and so on. That's not my point. What I want to focus is that how this absolute shamelessness of what is going now in the majority of Israel. We cannot any longer play there the usual game of there are that Netanyahu and his right-wingers kidnapped the government and against the peaceful democratic majority are pursuing radical Zionist agenda. I don't have time I will just improvise. Okay, screw it. That's the only way I will say anything. You know, we have to talk. So many things are to be clarified here. First, I have some radical Palestinian friends who claim two-state solution is a myth and so on and so on. So when I ask them, okay, what will work? They say Jews in Israel should commit a symbolic suicide, in the sense of renounce their Jewish identity and accept that they are just one among the people there. I think if one does this, one concedes too much to Netanyahu. What Netanyahu and his guys, and at this moment the majority even maybe of Jews in Israel, are doing is they are already committing a symbolic suicide. The Judaism that they stand for breaks with the most precious element of the Jewish legacy. There would not have been European Enlightenment without Jewish legacy. Then we should go a step further. I indicated this 2 years ago at the Frankfurt Book Fair, and I was interrupted by politicians there. Why? I pointed this out. Do you know that there was, from the very beginning, a link between Zionism, in the sense of let's return to our promised land, and European anti-Semitism? Who is the hero today of self-legitimization of the state of Israel? Of course, Alfred Balfour. You should study him. Do you know that Balfour was very anti-Semitic? He supported the establishment of Israel because this was an epoch, the first decades of the 20th century, where Jews, because of the pogroms in Russia and then October Revolution and so on, Jews were massively emigrating to the to what was it called at that point, British Empire, not yet United Kingdom, and he was afraid there will be too many Jews here. And this line goes on. Then it was, I always quote him, and they tried to catch me. No, sorry, he did it. The real evil guy, Reinhard Heydrich, the father of Holocaust. You know that in 1937, he wrote a text where he says there are two types of Jews, assimilationists and Zionists. With Zionists, they are perfect. We want them to go there. They are wonderful people. We will collaborate with them. We just don't want them here. So you have this. So it doesn't surprise me how support of Israel was, from the very beginning, part of the Nazi legacy. Like, just, we need them there, not to mix here. Another candidate, if you are old enough, you remember some 20 years ago, a crazy Norwegian guy killed in the suburb of Oslo 80 young social democrats. And I got from my Norwegian friends excerpts of his texts, and in them he says the same thing. He says, Jews are good there as a protection of the West. We should allow them to destroy the mosque, to build a new temple, just not here. And this is why I really think that Germany and Israel, no wonder Germany is supporting Israel, because it's, hey, we are at Holocaust again. You know who was the last one who proposed this? In April 1945, Himmler. He met with representatives of Jews and said, why don't we make a pact? The real enemy are the communists. Let's join forces. We just picked up wrong. There are so many texts which point in this direction. So what has this to do with shamelessness? What I find horrifying with all my critique of the I don't idealize Palestinians or Islam and so on. I was often accused of Islamophobia. But what really shocks me, I'm in my old age becoming an old, almost I would say ethically neoconservative, is, do you remember, this was for me the key event, in a prison south of Jerusalem, this was in July of the last year, Taiman, or how it's called, Taiman, 6-7 guards, which were Jews, but with some sense of honesty, escaped and brought out with video shots, you can find them easily, what they were doing with Palestinian prisoners then. The standard procedure was to tie them down and rape them, but with a big metal stick where there were needles and razors they up their ass. So they were raped up their ass and dozens bleed out and so on. And the IDF police was, with a minimal of honesty, arrested some of them. Big demonstrations in Israel and then public debates. And there comes the true depression. Absolutely the majority thought we have the right to do this. No human rights for members of Hamas and so on, but they decide who is the member. For example, this is just a brief quote from a Knesset debate. Somebody says, this is insanity. Someone in the prosecutor's office think it's possible to arrest soldiers for things they do to Nukba, Hamas unit. Then there is an interjection by probably a Palestinian member of Senate. To insert a stick in a person's rectum, is this legitimate? The other guy replies, yes, if she is Nukba, everything is legitimate to do. Everything. Then you have debates on TV, and now this is really depressive. You cannot say this is a narrow circle of the government. Really, as my friend Owen Jones put it, the public life in Israel now is in a kind of a, how should I put it, genocidal grip. You have debates like this, critical debates. Do we have the right to kill all Palestinians in Gaza, or just men and not children and women? The predominant opinion is we have the right to kill them all because children are future terrorists and women will give birth to them, and so on and so on. Now comes next provocation to you. So, you got it what disturbs me here. I have no illusions here. I knew somebody who visited some Saddam's prisons after Saddam was overthrown, and what he saw there ruined his life. Opponents of Saddam were, you had them on the hanging down just by with rope around their testicles and so on, and so all are doing horrible things. What I consider pretty terrifying is that this absolute openness, how you can talk openly about the right to torture people, to starve people, whatever you want, and it's gradually becoming acceptable. Now, I will give you, and that's very sad what I will tell you. There are people whom I still admire in Israel, and I'm not kidding here. You know who is, for me. There are two guys, Ami Ayalan and Ephraim Halevi. The first one was ex-chief of Shin Bet, the other ex-chief of Mossad. Look what Halevi said days after September 11th attack. We don't have the luxury to wait. We have to have a viable policy which will deal with the presence in this area of the Jews and the Palestinians. And we are doomed to live together. I don't want to say we are doomed to die together. And if our approach is that we are doomed to live together, we can simply live together with one part of the equation having the upper hand and ignoring the aspiration of the other hand, and so on and so on. So, isn't this a sad time when you should always bear this into account? This is already a public joke in Israel, that the ones who are really, who Netanyahu considers as enemies are Shin Bet and Mossad. Because they're the secret police, but they know the real state of things. And one of them, the other one, Ami Ayalan, even had a wonderful proposal. He said, we should release from prison Marwan Barghouti, who is a kind of Palestinian Mandela, there for 20 years. And he said he is the only one who can beat Hamas. Let's do this. But this is now completely, completely disappearing. And now comes I'm proceeding very quickly, next very sad point. The role of Europe here. I spoke by chance at some meeting in Ljubljana with some very high-ranking European politicians. Those who were even in the forefront of making public statements against, Israel is going too far, we cannot tolerate this. And they were from different states, different political orientations, and they were all telling me the same thing. That I'm sorry to this realist approach. Yes, it's horrible what IDF is doing, but ethnic cleansing works. So what we should do is formally criticize Israel publicly, but continue to sell arms to support it and just wait hypocritically till Israel will finish its job. And then after a year or two, we will say, okay, what can we do? This is now the state of things. This is, I think, the reality of the situation. So what structure has this shamelessness? I'm returning here to Lacan in his critique of 68, where he says that the students fear they might be carried away by buffoonery. Let us start rather from the fact that buffoonery is already there. Perhaps by mixing in a little shame, who knows, we may be able to hold it back. And interestingly enough, you find here a subtle, nice connection with Frankfurt School. You know that already in 1940, I don't know if it was Horkheimer or Adorno, or even Marcuse, sorry, I'm confused here, they introduced a term which, it's not totally correct, secondly, but it's a very important indication. Repressive desublimation. It means if you annihilate ethical barriers, if you say, I have a dirty dreams, I don't care, let's torture people, orgies, let's do all we want, there is nothing liberating in it. Freud already knew this. That's crucial to understand where we are today. Freud wrote back, even in his earlier work, that, because the usual view of psychoanalysis, it is, on the one hand, we have repression, sexuality is too much repressed. On the other hand, if you bring out the unconscious, you go crazy. You just want to screw, torture others all the time. We need a right balance. Freud, in a masterful way, he said something totally unexpected. He says that perversion is a psychic state in which the unconscious, in Freudian sense, is totally invisible, out of reach. Nowhere is repression stronger than in perversion. So when you, as it were, open yourself up, I want to rape, torture, all your dirty dreams, nowhere you are more enslaved to your unconscious without being aware of it than at that point. And that's what we are getting today. This is, I think, why we need to rediscover shame. Shame doesn't mean, I nonetheless have some limits, I am afraid to be very vulgar in my style, to copulate in public with a woman. No. Shame is constitutive of desire, which is why there is no greater betrayal of your desire than perversion. Perversion is the ultimate oppression. Lacan saw this clearly when he said that all authoritarian regimes need as their hidden obverse perversion, which is why the IDF perversion, Zionist perversion, perversion of the Trumpians, and so on, that's the form of new authoritarianism. And what Lacan predicted came true. With this new populism, The new master's shamelessness by far exceeds the shamelessness of the old leftist protesters. Now, my final point. So what can we do in such a situation? I must do here, as a good Stalinist with a human face, that's how I now define myself. And if you were here yesterday, Rovelli gave me a wonderful answer. No, he said, I'm a Leninist with an ugly face. He is on our side, you know, politically even, Rovelli. So what I want to say is that even I, in some of my books, succumbed to this temptation of saying, but today critique of ideology no longer works. You can say anything, it's taken as a joke. Look at Trump. He turns everything into a rumor. There is no truth, and so on. So Trump, precisely as an obscene postmodernist who is caught. This is so important, although you may say it's just psychological feature. It's not. You know what really depressed me? AOC, I'm a male chauvinist, the attractive Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, she discovered that the many people who voted for her, she was re-elected in Congress, in federal elections voted for Trump. And she inquired into it. I don't know how, got some of their names, asked them, why are you doing this? And she got a wonderful means for me terrifying answer. Her answer, the answer that she got it because you and Trump have something together. You are sincere, you openly say what you think. While Democrats are just well-trained and so on and so on, they are afraid, which was incidentally in some sense true. But that's another story. What I want to say is that then another exploration demonstrated that when Trump is caught lying or being vulgar, you know that this helps him with his followers. And the reaction is, again, this means he is human like us. He is not a robot like Democrats trained by some experts and so on and so on. So, as my good friend Alenka Zupancic wrote, this is the ultimate moral, she doesn't use this term, decadence today, that lying, manipulating, if you do it in a proper, vulgar way, in itself becomes an act of authenticity. But I don't think the conclusion of this should be, so I don't know what. Let's just describe the cynical gays. Whatever we say will be reappropriated in this era of universal cynicism. No. I think that Trump at the same time gives us a unique chance. Don't be afraid. I'm not in any way praising Trump. I'm saying the first lesson the left should take is that still, in spite of all the horrors that are going on today, in Trump is, as I like to say, a symptom of what was fake in the till now predominant American welfare state liberal democracy. This is why, and this Biden didn't get, this is why Trump first term was totally misperceived by large majority of moderate leftists as this was just a historical mistake. He came, all we have to do is return to the good old centrist social democratic vision and so on and so on. Now that Trump is re-elected, we should accept that he signals the era of the end of the old social democratic, even this welfare state, moderately leftist liberalism. And this is why you here in United Kingdom are a model of it. You know what country you are. You're a country where you have a party in power which is inefficient, but it's a moderate center-right party. It's called the Labour Party. And the only serious competition are more crazy conservatives And this is the mixture today. It's not just manipulation. If you look, with a couple of exceptions, Rachel Reeves or who, if you want white men in power, you need Labour Party. If you want Indians and women in power and blacks, you go to neoconservatives who are more crazy. The situation is so confused, but what gives us hope? First, left reaction should be, it's not enough to remain with the old welfare state moderate doxa. Not too much to the left being moderate. One lesson to be taken for Trump is that Trump learned from the very beginning, in really tense situation, moderation doesn't work. It's not, oh, let's remain. No, you have to win, you have to have the courage to draw a distinction. Second thing, again, there is no return. The message of Trump is the left has to rethink radically its presuppositions. I don't mean some naive revolution. I mean that. Now I will really conclude with something so naive that maybe you will laugh. And my proof will be Trump in his first period and even your beloved Boris Johnson. Everybody knows this. We need a new version of communism. I don't mean Soviet Politburo and so on. Look at, for example, ecology. Everybody knows this is a global problem. You know where I got this lesson? Do you remember 3-4 years ago, there was in August, in the area of Vancouver, Seattle, temperatures were around 50 degrees Celsius. And you cannot say, oh, this is a local problem. No, locally they were doing relatively well with their ecological measures. It's that the whole circulation of air around the northern hemisphere is perturbed. Then, even generally with ecology, are you aware that more and more scientists are convinced that we have a way too easy idea of global warming? As if it means, okay, it will be 5 degrees Celsius more, a couple of towns underwater, but then there will be no stability. No. More and more are convinced that there will simply not be this stability of rhythms. It will be a confused weather, like 2-3 years total drought, then floods and so on, no regular rhythm. It's the same with artificial intelligence. I'm not a pessimist there, but look what is happening with us here, with academia. This is not a marginal phenomenon, what I will tell you, and I, in a perverse way, love it. Do you know that many books are already written through ChatGPT? Then, in many publishing houses, it's ChatGPT which makes the review. Then they publish it, and many readers use ChatGPT like do a 2-page resume and so on. So I will conclude with my old dirty, you all know it, I know, joke about what ideal sex would be in the future. You don't need to do it. You have a date. You, if you are a woman, bring your electric dildo. Your partner brings they're disgusting instruments, but they exist. This plastic vagina, you can regulate how strong it squeezes you, color, and so on. And you connect the two, and this is for me how I define freedom today. Getting rid of the superego to enjoy. The machines are there buzzing, and what do? It's wonderful. No superego. Machines are enjoying for us. You sit down, you drink tea, debate, maybe you debate Lacan, Hegel, and so on, you know. So, but isn't this similar to this ChatGPT? The system will turn without us. Will this work? Well, there is one problem, that we will never be simply outside, through modes of digital control. What I fear most, I've written a book on it. Wired brain, Neuralink, when our brain flow of thoughts is directly linked to a computer, we will literally, in some sense, no longer be human. So to confront all this problem, not to mention war, immigrations, catastrophes, it's for me a kind of a primary evidence that we will need some kind of, not universal government, that would be total corruption, but some kind of a much stronger international obligatory coordination. That's why I liked, it will sound perverted, but nonetheless, that's why I liked COVID. You know why? Did you notice here that Trump and Boris Johnson, with all their corruption, inefficiency, they nonetheless were compelled to do some things which almost looked communist. You know, the first elements of universal basic income, everybody. So for me, the reason I'm optimist for the left is that I am a radical pessimist. Pessimist in the sense that, that's why I like to provoke people, the future will be more war communism. I don't have these dreams, oh, new creativity, non-alienation, whatever. My point is, in an absolutely non-avoidable way, we are approaching new forms of emergency state. And we have to get ready to it. If we, the left, are not get ready to it, how to do relatively, it can be done, self-organized, democratic, not in this multi-party system, but coordination among people way, be sure fascists will do it. So I think that, again, communism is absolute emergency in the sense of war communism, not terror, but emergency state. We will be approaching emergency states. If we are not getting ready for that, we are lost. Here, to really conclude, I even agree with a guy who often brutally criticizes me, Noam Chomsky. He really hates me. But look, what he said, I totally agree recently. We are at a unique moment in human history. Decisions that must be made right now will determine the course of future history, if there is to be any human history, which is very much in doubt. There is a narrow window in which we must implement measures to avert cataclysmic destruction of the environment, measures that are quite feasible. And this goes through all crises. Like I read now a wonderful book on Ukraine, which focuses not just on Russian atrocities, blah, 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 but you know what catastrophe Ukraine is with regard to environment? Poisonous water, destroyed resources, the whole land is changing. Another friend of mine, Michael Marder, wrote a wonderful text on Gaza, where he said Gaza is now a kind of a post-human space, which is neither nature nor culture, but new nature, even new plants and so on, emerging in total ruin. We have to get ready to that. And now my really last point, this doesn't mean that, my God, it's serious, we should be serious. No, the only way to survive this is through dark humor of our own. It's not dark, that's why I like dirty jokes. It's not dark humor in the sense of, oh, the situation is horrible, so let's make jokes to survive. No, the situation itself resembles dark humor. You remember a week or two ago, United States received 59, I think, South African births, saying there is a genocide going on in South Africa. Okay, maybe some of them are treated unfairly, but how can you say this and not mention what happens in Gaza? You know what's the secret? Really, last sentence. We don't need more exquisite analysis. We also need that. But we need to, often in reports from Gaza and so on, media are telling the truth, but they are presenting it in a context which mystifies it. We have to learn to read things more literally. That's the true horror. Dirty jokes with which I will conclude. A friend of mine, it happened 30 years ago, a lady, we sat in a company and she was explaining how you do certain type of biscuit. It was cooking. And then she used a sentence which was meant as part of how you cook some stuff and used the following sentence. It doesn't have to be really hard. It is important that it goes deep in. And we all laughed. This is how we should learn to read our situation. Read it in a literal way, and the truth is there. I'm sorry if I was too long. Thank you very much.